relationship between legal systems and wealthy elites in silencing critical journalism. You know, the courts have become important battlegrounds actually for, freedom of the press. A lot of people won't make use of the courts to silence or intimidate reporters, in different ways. It happens all over the world. We have a whole list. It's happening in Russia. In fact, even the Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershowitz, was sentenced to 16 years in penal colony, on espionage charges. That was last year. We also have similar instances in India. Asif Sultan, and even in Nigeria, Jones Abil, for example, was rearrested on terrorism and cybercrime charges. And the courts, of course, can be manipulated in some, semi-democratic institutions as well. It's happening in Cameroon, Kyrgyzstan. There are a whole lot of issues, related to this that have become a new method of silencing dissent. Even here in the United States, actually, we had the founder, editor-in-chief of William Free Press, that's based in West Virginia. It's a small organization focused on local journalism. They have been so much intimidated that they can't investigate local issues because of threats from some people that they were going to go to court. And most of these media organizations don't have enough resources to, waste in litigation and all that. They can't even operate efficiently. How much more wasting money on litigation? And sometimes those kind of things, chills free speech and expression. And of course, some of us are also familiar with all this common expression about how slap, how somehow we have all these strategic efforts to dampen, public discourse generally, and somehow it kind of presents a chilling effect on, the operations of the media. So the strategic lawsuits against public participation, is something we also want to look at. And this is not just for journalists alone, because when we're talking about public participation, we're looking at even free expression of individuals, holding meetings, the ability to express yourself, or even some of us who are participating in this kind of forum, for you to express yourselves genuinely, it's also a challenge, most democracies. So now, of course, we are, well, okay, well, that could be a genuine case, but I think that Trump's uh, intention to sue the BBC over what I think maybe was kind of sloppy journalism is also another threat. He has ABC News has settled, threat for a lawsuit, for something perhaps if you go into the details of the case, you know, um, just Stephanopoulos, the anchor there, I think the choice of what is, caused that. And of course, even in CBS, you know, a lawsuit like that also led to a settlement of $16 million, to his foundation and all that kind of stuff. So this is a constant thing. It's not just, it's all over the world. So, and we thought we should look at this in the realm of, how the courts that are supposed to be an institution for democracy can also be an institution for, anti-democratic forces. And now, are there possibilities of, anti-SLAPP legislations in countries that some of these things, exist? So those are some of the issues we want to look at. So having said that, I promised, I don't know whether Lena has joined. I saw her initially because I told her that she will be speaking first so that we can allow her to pursue her evening activities because it's late over there. Then I'll come to Professor Pavlik. Thereafter, we'll listen to Dan Boylan. So, Lena, if you're on, you can go ahead. Otherwise, Lena, are you on?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, sure, yeah. So,
Hi.
the floor is
If
yours.
Thank you. I'm just going to share my screen if that's okay. Um, let's see if I can. Oh, this is blocking the present.
Yeah, we can see
I
it.
can start. Can you see the entire presentation?
Yes.
Perfect. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Equo, for inviting me to speak today. And my name is Lena Fox, and I work with UNESCO in the section for freedom of expression and safety of journalists, specifically in the communication and information sector. It's like a whole labyrinth over here. And in particular, I work in the rule of law team. So we do work with prosecutors, judges, police, lawyers, and also sometimes electoral practitioners on issues relating to freedom of expression and safety of journalists. So just quickly, an overview, I wanted to explain kind of UNESCO's involvement in the global initiative against SLAPs. And first, that really brings us to understand why UNESCO. And so UNESCO is a very particular agency because it's a convening power. So it has the unique mandate to work with different actors to promote freedom of expression, access to information, and press freedom. And so that not only includes, as we know, freedom of expression just in and of itself, the right to speak, but also the right to access information unimpeded, and also to ensure that that information can be disseminated without any obstacles. And so we've identified that within this mandate, judiciary systems and law enforcement play a very unique role in enabling the right to freedom of expression. What goes on in the courtroom has a direct impact on these freedoms. And so, oops. So, UNESCO's work is more situated specifically in the UN Plan of Action on the safety of journalists and the issue of impunity. So we actually spearhead, along with the OHCHR, the first systemic UN-wide plan to create a free and safe environment for journalists and media workers. And so we do work in both conflict and non-conflict settings in addressing the complexities of freedom of expression, access to information, safety of journalists in each of the countries that were mandated to do so by member states. And so we have kind of a five-tiered approach to that. On the top down, we work mainly with global norms and standards, so contributing to different UN resolutions and also to certain accountability mechanisms. And then we also do awareness raisings, campaign, international advocacy, monitoring and reporting, which I will get to very soon, research, and which is what I work on most specifically is capacity building. So trainings, like what I said, for duty bearers, but also we also train journalists, media stakeholders, media workers, and lawyers. And so one of the specific things that UNESCO kind of works with relation to media is we condemn killings of journalists. So a killing of a journalist is the most severe form of threat, which manifests as a threat against freedom of expression. And so we actually have an observatory of killed journalists that we as UNESCO condemn each time there is a killing. But killings are not the only threats that journalists face, and they're not the most numerous. So, I'm going to skip this for a second. So we, as UNESCO, had identified that strategic lawsuits, FLAPs, were a rise. We noticed that in the EU, the Commission, and from reports from our field offices, that there was the rise. So we needed to formulate a global initiative in order to get more data and provide a roadmap for how, as UNESCO, we could address this. So strategic lawsuits are specific legal claims which are initiated by a powerful actor to intimidate or silence weaker parties who criticize or disseminate public interest messages. So through this initiative, we've noticed a trend of a weaponization of the legal system, which we need to work to address. We need to address it because these have very, very real world implications. I wanted to highlight three particular testimonies, which just represent just some of the voices that we heard throughout the global initiative and the embarkation of that. Maria Ressa was a Filipino-American journalist who faced over 20 legal proceedings brought against her, including tax evasion charges and additional intimidation through cyberbullying and gender-based violence. Khadija Ismailova was an investigative Azerbaijani journalist who was arrested and then convicted for charges, which included tax evasion and others. She was also targeted via blackmail, a gender-based form of blackmail, when a personal video of her was shared to destroy her reputation. And this one was a very well-known case. More recently, Daphne Galizia was a Maltese journalist and an anti-corruption activist who faced over 50 lawsuits brought against her, involved in daily court battles, and eventually led to her murder in 2017. And her lawsuits didn't end with her murder. Her family actually inherited her lawsuits. So there's a very, very, very personal cost to dealing with slaps. It's incredibly draining, as I'm sure we'll hear more today. There's an immense time investment, just in a very high amount of financial burden brought forth for legal defense. There's a cost to your profession. So the time that that you would be devoting to your practice, you now have to devote to these litigation efforts against you. And that also has a huge psychological, reputational impact. That in some cases, it leads to your deprivation of liberties, heavy fines, and it extends beyond the courtroom. Showed in some cases, it does lead to death. And so on a personal level, these threats against journalists are quite massive. And we've identified that this is not just a burden on journalists, but it has social impacts, which are very, very markable. So I think one of the main ones is the fact that these slaps, the trend of slaps, sends a signal to which there are some topics which should not be reported. And that creates a massive chilling effect, as Dr. Equal explained. So a vacuum of information where people either won't or can't report on certain topics which should be reported on, and in fact should be, people have the right to know. And that also leads to a loss in public trust. So when there are, it's an erosion of the rule of law, of the public court system, and the fact that the weaponization of the court system can lead to these repressive measures against freedom of expression. So UNESCO, understanding this and understanding the impacts of slaps, we launched a global initiative on strategic lawsuits against freedom of expression. It was in April of 2025. And we engaged with roughly, give or take, around 800 actors. I say actors because there were 500 participants which attended a very intensive webinar series on legal threats to freedom of expression, with a specific focus on slaps and financial accusations. And then we also enacted a survey, a participatory survey for more than 300 judicial professionals, which informed our data, which I'm about to say. And so the trends that we received from this initiative, there were three main ones. Strategic lawsuits are rising, indeed so. They are innovative and rapidly evolving, which I'll explain in a second. And judicial actors require more support than ever to address this nature of these attacks. So 78% of respondents in the survey reported that they noticed an increase of slaps. So it's a high number. 89% of respondents reported practicing law in a jurisdiction without anti-slap legislation, should say. And this one was interesting. 1 in 3 lawyers do not take journalist cases, including for fear of retaliation. So that was a large number. And then 42% of judges and prosecutors feel underprepared to tackle these cases. And so not only does do slaps concern the direct actors, so the lawyers and the journalists which are engaged in them. But we also know this to trend as to the laws, the legislative components to it. So legislation, which was not originally intended to regulate media, is increasingly deployed against them. We've seen this in the past, cybercrime laws in certain countries, but there was a demarcated trend to use and weaponize certain laws, which were never used before to silence journalists. And so from this report, we've identified 5 main areas which we can, as UNESCO, continue to work within the UN Plan of Action, specifically regarding the promotion of legislation reforms to ensure more protective environment for media independence, creation and circulation of knowledge resources, so between lawyers and also between journalists. Well, that also leads into the strengthening of networks of lawyers. And this one is especially pertinent to us, enhancing specialization of duty bearers. So working with judges and prosecutors, how to identify a slap case when it comes on your bench. How do you understand that it's frivolous? And empowering journalists. So doing also as well capacity buildings with journalists, providing support to them in whatever way possible to address this rise. So that is a bit of an overview of UNESCO's work on SLAPs. You're welcome to read the report here. I've added it here. And you're also welcome to contact me with any follow-up regarding UNESCO's work in this area. And I'm very pleased to be here today. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Lena. I really appreciate your thoughts, and that will actually give us the opportunity to really jump into business and discuss more, intensely on some of these issues. I am not sure whether Attorney Gabriel Gershowitz is on already. If as soon as you get in, I'd like to introduce you as well. I also wanted to emphasize that the Gershowitz Conference is an annual conference we started with Rutgers University School of Public Affairs and Administration about 13 years ago. And it's actually our flagship annual lecture series, that really focuses on global issues, peace, dialogue, and of course, issues related to journalism practice around the world. So we'll be talking more about it. Gershowitz, if you're around, I'd like to introduce the son of Michael Gershowitz, whom we named this conference after actually, because he passed away sometime in 2015 or so. And we've been running the program since we were doing the program together. When he passed on, we, renamed the program after him as well. I don't know whether Professor Gershowitz is on. I saw him a short while ago. Sorry, Professor Pavlik. If you're on, I'd like to let you, say, give your own remarks. Otherwise, we'd like to have a Q&A for Lena.
Well, thank you, Dr. Ekwo. Appreciate your invitation to participate in this very important and timely forum. And I was so fascinated by Lena Fox's presentation. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to add my thoughts. And let me see if I can share my screen.
Sure.
Given the fact this is an online, virtual, global event, let me say good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I think we've got people in all different time zones and parts of the world. So I'm delighted to have this opportunity to talk with you for a few minutes, and I look forward to the continuing discussion. So, the topic being power in the press, courts, billionaires, and the battle for media freedom and democracies. I'm going to focus particularly on the billionaires, and I'll add a few thoughts on the courts as well and the consequences for media freedom in democracies. But I'll focus a little more on the billionaire side, the money side of this, as it were. I think that it's all interrelated. But when we look at the funding question, for me, I think a lot of it has to do with the rise of artificial intelligence, which isn't happening on its own. It's the machines may be getting smarter, and maybe they're doing some of their own, coding. But I think that most of the development of AI is coming from the funding that is fueling its development from mostly big tech. And there's, extraordinary amounts of funding coming from the uh, billionaires who own or have invested in these enterprises. I just saw another one today that Jeff Bezos is making himself chair of a whole new AI initiative and putting billions into it. And so, the technology billionaires, as it were, and their enterprises are putting funding on the order of trillions of dollars into the development of AI. And of course, whether it'll be a funding of a technology that ultimately proves to be of any enduring value, we'll have to see how that plays out. But as was reported just recently in the Washington Post, big tech has invested just in this past 12 months, $360 billion in AI's development. And that's more than funding for the nutrition supplement program that, was cut during our government shutdown for 4 years. So it's an extraordinary amount of funding when we think about what it suggests are priorities and how that can proceed. And I think that, nobody knows exactly what the goal is, the end game is in all of this. So this is my inference about, part of the motivation for why they're funding on this level of AI's development. I think a lot of it is a drive to advance the development of generative AI, which, we already see is widespread, but it continues to evolve. First, just dealing with words, then images, then audio, then video, and how it deals with these different forms of content continues to evolve and advance technologically, at least. I've been looking at it closely myself, and it's pretty extraordinary. And that's a whole nother topic. But in addition to generative AI, I think the advance of agentic AI is also emerging as an important part of why there's such a big push for AI, because with agentic AI, that's kind of task-oriented AI, and the ability to replace human workers, I think, is a lot of the motivation of creating agentic AI. But it's also playing out in other arenas. This may be in kind of an intersectional, but the whole big cyber attack that was just reported by Anthropic earlier this week, that hackers had used Anthropic's AI to automate cyber attacks around the world on 30 different global enterprises, is, maybe the first example of where this is going. But then also longer term, I think the investment is about developing the thing that we call artificial superintelligence, or AI that can go beyond what humans can do. But it's also about the data centers and the enormous energy that they need. So, it's all of that, I think, is behind this investment. And in the process, one of the things that's happening is a continuation of something that's been going on since the development of the internet and the World Wide Web, which is revenues are flowing to big tech, and they're flowing away from the media. And so AI is only contributing to this flow. And one of the most significant examples right now that's happening is this arena of smart search. So, probably everybody now, you go on your search tool, and the first thing it asks you is, you want AI to summarize the search results? And of course, it's hard not to say yes, because it's good at it, and it gives you a really good summary, and then you can see all the sources. The thing that's not happening, though, is people are not clicking onto those sources, which are often news media. And it's all cutting funding because fewer people are going to news media, controlled content. So we saw it earlier with, the rise of, say, online advertising, the flow of revenues from media to big tech, and now it's just continuing and amplifying even further. Meta projects 10% of its global $16 billion revenues will come from ads for scams and fake goods, which are almost all now created via generative AI content generators. And a lot of this is like AI slop. If you go on social media, which now increasingly are platforms for buying and selling goods and services, the stuff driving it is all this AI slop, which is just, gets you scrolling through because it's like, what? And it's all fake, but it's compelling and it looks so real. That's part of what drives it. And so news media are striking deals left and right with, big tech. OpenAI has deals with the Associated Press, the Washington Post, working with Anthropic, and the USA Today signing up a deal with Perplexity, and it just goes on and on because they want to be able to use the AI tools and they want to get some revenue back. And so there is that. Amazon has a deal with the New York Times, $20 million a year. Well, sounds like a lot of money, and I suppose it's valuable amount of money, but it's a drop in the bucket to the revenue that big tech will be getting from all of this, and amplifying on things that have been happening already with the rise of news deserts in America and maybe in other democracies. The funding is heading away from local, and it's all on a global scale. And so big tech is getting that funding. Maybe the big news media will get some funding that will support them, but it all continues to the drying up of local journalism. And that's where, we also need great journalism is in our democracies at the local level, not only at the federal level, but, it's all just continuing to fuel further problems. So AI is, as it advances, I would suggest is furthering inequality on a global scale. Because one of the things that AI has also enabled, and I find AI to be fascinating, and I'm intrigued by the possibilities for innovation, and maybe there are some good things that can come out of it. But at the same time, I'm very concerned about how this has created a platform for just an enormous flow of deep fakes that are deliberately misleading, that are conveying misinformation. They look real, but they are twists on reality that you can't easily discriminate. And it's creating a platform for virtually unfettered and wide-scale digital propaganda, which can be directly political or indirectly, So all of that. But for the media, it puts the media on, I would argue, the horns of a dilemma. As Lena Fox pointed out, we've seen the weaponization of a lot of speech. And I would say the far right has especially been effective at weaponizing freedom of speech on social media platforms and elsewhere. And they haven't put the same kind of energy into protecting freedom of the press. Instead, it's just the opposite. And so what we've seen over the last 50 years, and it's accelerating now, is a press that is increasingly weakened. It used to be, one of the pillars of society a century ago, and even half a century ago. But over the past 50 years, as those revenues have drained away from news media and gone to big tech, the press is far weaker than it was as an institution. That's not to say there aren't still some strong news organizations or individual journalists who are, fearless. But as an institution, the press is far less of a robust guardian of freedom of press than it was a half a century ago. And it struggles increasingly to hold those in power accountable for their actions. To criticize is to invite you to be disenfranchised. And, you're cut from the White House press corps. You're cut from access to the military. You're cut from, all of that, and threatened with then the big lawsuits, including, President Trump, who sues. He doesn't just sue you and, a little $1 million. His suits are $15 billion, like the one against the BBC. So the U.S. Supreme Court has not done a lot to protect the freedom of press in the First Amendment. It has taken aspects of the First Amendment in the U.S., to protect freedom of religion or aspects of other elements of the First Amendment, but not the freedom of press, which is, journalism has been the fourth estate in many ways, the fourth branch of government to hold the other three branches accountable. And it undermines, all of this is undermining the role of the press as the fourth estate, and it undermines a healthy democracy. So just to offer some concluding reflections, as an academic, I would be remiss if I didn't say we need further research on this, but it's urgently needed. We need research now that can really address some of these issues to develop better understanding of what's going on and also to maybe develop solutions. And I think one of them is sometimes, when a problem happens, we think, it's a disaster, and it probably is. But maybe there's an opportunity for innovation as well. At least that's what I tell my students, is it's an opportunity for innovation. Maybe there's a problem that you can help to solve through some new way of using these new emerging, tools that are out there. So I'll leave you with that, and I thank you. Look forward to our continuing conversation.
Thank you very much. Matter of fact, I didn't quite introduce him very well, and he has really demonstrated that his research interests have been really on the impact of new technology on journalism, media, and society. So, and he has widely written in on that, and we're benefiting from his expertise in that field. Quite frankly, it's a complex situation, weaponization of free speech, and also weaponization of the courts. So it's a double whammy, and some of these things will, begin to look at actually. When I remember at the onset of all these um, internet and all that, there was this optimism about how the fragmentation of the information ecosystem will help to unleash new democratic space and all that. But unfortunately, it's turning around to be the other way around. In fact, a lot of people are even talking about how we now have digital authoritarianism in one way or the other, as opposed to, freedom that is supposed to unleash for all of us. So I thank you so much. Let me briefly introduce Im Jong-won, who is the program manager of Asia Pacific Institute for Broadcasting and Development. So he is actually right now in Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. Im Jong-won, I thank you so much for joining us. And of course, Professor Nnayi Lugokoro is he is from the Department of Mass Communications at the University of Nigeria, Nsukka. And my friend John Kavanagh is the director of Plunk Foundation in Cincinnati, Ohio. Again, as soon as we get Gershowitz, we would like to introduce him. But meanwhile, let me invite Dan Boylan from Washington to chime in. Thereafter, we would like to have some questions for the panelists, John Pavlik, Lena, and of course, whatever we'll hear from Dan Boylan. Dan Boylan, if you're on, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Uchenna-Ekwo. It's a pleasure to be here at this year's Gershowitz Conference. Pleasure to see everyone. The good news is that we're all under attack, as Uchenna just said, and as Professor Pavlik and Lena, you at the UN, as everyone said, we're under attack here in this era of the digital dictatorships, digital authoritarianism. That right? That's the bad news. Sorry, the good news is that we're here at the Gershowitz Conference fighting back today. And I think that's something that journalists in this tough world these days, when we step back and realize that 25 years ago, the internet was this beautiful thing that was happening, and now it seems to be a noose wrapped around our necks. It's hard, but gatherings like this, getting people from around the world, from Kuala Lumpur to New York to all around who are gathered here on this call from all the world's continents, this is what we need to do. So I'm a journalist. I've also worked with the U.S. government, as I say, sometimes underneath the table, assisting journalists in difficult places. And what we're dealing with right now with slaps, I'd like to talk a little bit today about the what just happened last week, which is really phenomenal, but it seems to be that's where we're at right now as these slaps. Lena was talking about the evolution of slaps and that we feel them rising. Professor Pavlik was talking about the billionaire class and how they're manipulating them. And I think that could we see a more amazing example of this? Let's go a little bit more into what's happening with the BBC and Donald Trump. This is political theater at its highest level. This is also happening. Donald Trump has these quivers in his arsenal, in his arrow, his quivers in his arsenal that he pulls out when things get that desperate. And you've got this media environment that's just really toxic. That this cloud that follows Trump around, the Epstein situation keeps popping up to the surface. The global economy is shaky right now. What's going on? So what does Donald Trump do? He says, I'm going to sue what? The BBC, which really, like, I first got into the BBC when I was about 16. Pardon me, I was 18 and I was in Beijing during Tiananmen Square. And I had a professor said, we need to listen to the BBC on our old transistor. And the BBC is the heart. It is the heart of the English language media, right? I worked at the Associated Press at Rockefeller Center when it was there as a young man. And I was an international news editor. And every 4 hours on the AP, this was in the late 90s, as the internet was really starting to first blossom, every 4 hours at the AP International desk, you would have to check the BBC headlines and see was the AP generally aligned with what our top headlines were with the every 4 hour update from BBC Radio from London. So that's what the BBC is. And last week, Donald Trump threatened to sue them, and this is political theater that he's doing. It's a $1 billion lawsuit, and it's over an edit. It's over an edit to a documentary that came out just before the election last year, 2024, and it's an edit in the documentary. Let's think about this for a minute. Let's look at a few things. Is there any chance that Donald Trump is going to win this? Let's first look at that a little bit, and then we'll go into sort of the real world of slaps and what's happening now. And as we've discussed here already, let's think a little bit about how these slaps are unfolding. First thing we know here, and this is the elegance of law and how law has developed in the Western world to protect journalism over the last 400 years, if you think of English common law. A key tenet of this is that defamation is real, and that it allows people to go back and say, is someone harming my reputation? The BBC admits in a sense that the clip that Donald Trump is talking about, the clip had to do with the January 6th uprising in 2021 when Trump supporters stormed the U.S. Capitol in an effort to block the official certification of Joe Biden's election, January 6th. The BBC admits that they took some of Trump's words that day and edited them in such a way that were somewhat misleading. They stitched together two pieces of the story that were 50 minutes apart. The issue with that is that I would say that this is where Donald Trump does two things that are really quite amazing. One, he uses slaps, and he's done this since the 1970s, earlier versions of them. He uses the courts as part of his political arsenal. He fights in the courts. He throws sand in the gear of the courts. The other thing, during January 6th, one could argue, and I've had this discussion with Uchenna, I believe, late at night sometime, when we were doing our good thinking, right? That if someone's trying to do a coup d'etat, they usually don't write down A, B, C, this is the plan to do it. They don't do that. They drop a dot out there, and then they move their hand and they drop another dot out there, and they allow people, as James Comey, the former FBI director, has said, that's what mafia bosses do. That's what people do who don't get caught. So Donald Trump, even on the day that he did his speech, was he saying A, B, C, D, E, F, G equals the alphabet? No, he was saying A, Z, imply the rest, right? He implies things. So I think if you go back and you look at what the BBC did their edit that day, they show that, yeah, he implied things. Does that mean that didn't say them? No, he said them. So we're really caught in a very, very difficult place as journalists when you're trying to cover someone like that. In this case with Trump, his reputation is already as someone who's a difficult person who gets himself into legal trouble, who's misleading. The courts have already found him liable for fraud and for sexual assault, right? He was even impeached by the House over January 6th, and then he was acquitted by the Senate. So the background here is that, Trump is claiming that the BBC or he's implying that the BBC damaged his reputation, but his reputation was already damaged, and he ended up winning the election anyway, right? That's what's fascinating here is that this Panorama documentary came out, which Trump says damaged my reputation, and he's allowed to say that because of defamation. But the reality is his reputation was already damaged, and he went on to win the election. So that makes this case, it's going to be pretty hard, people are thinking, for Trump to really win this case. So what is his point here? And he's also doing, I believe it's in Florida where he's trying to do this, because in England, pretty much you read about the analysis of what's going on here since this bubbled to the surface last week. And for the most part, your leading British legal minds would say there's no way he's going to win the case in England. For the fact that the law is slightly different there, but also for the fact that he's got to prove so much more, but he's going to be trying to do it in Florida. Why would that be the case? Well, another piece of slaps is that they are political theater. Slaps are so oftentimes political theater. So Trump is doing it, or he's thinking of doing it, the case, if he doesn't go through with it, down in Florida, where he's got certain judges who are close to him, and he knows that he can manipulate more of the story from Florida. Let's see, I had a few more notes here on this. Right, we've gone through slaps a bit here already on sort of what these things are and how these things work. And let's get down to now, as I was saying, I'm trying to unpack, having been a journalist, a bit of the political theater here. And I know that Lena mentioned there, Daphne Caruana Galizia. I met her son, Matthew, a couple of years ago at a Transparency International conference. Khadija Ismailova, I used to do lots of work in Azerbaijan years ago. So you go out in the field and you meet folks. I've got a story that I'm going to wrap up here at the very end about a dear friend of mine who was involved in a slap. I don't want to bring his name up, and I'll allude to the case, because once you've had one of these things hit you, it's sort of like a jellyfish in the sea. It stings, and the more you kind of try and pull it off your body, it just stretches and grows. How does that happen? Well, that happens because, as John was saying, as the media has become more global and local journalists are under attack, not just with less resources, but when the machinery comes in, and let's say I or anyone on the call suddenly gets dragged in front of a court because of our writing, and we're being sued for $10,000. We might say, okay, we're a journalist. Our salary is such and such. I can probably afford a lawyer, and maybe I can do $2,000 or $3,000 of legal fees to figure this out. But suddenly someone says, Trump comes in and says, I'm going to be suing Dan Boylan for $10 million. Well, I suddenly realize, gosh, I'm going to get dragged into the court system and chewed up and spat out for, I don't know how long. It's the classic case of how much money do you want to pay to move things along? And if I had $100,000, I could probably get some lawyers to work for me to resolve the case in a year's time. If I had $500,000, it could probably be resolved in 3 months. But if you're a journalist and you have got very little money, you're just thinking, my career is now blown for the next 5 years because I'm going to spend all of the money that I have and all the time that I have fighting a case. So it's an incredibly effective way to shut down smaller local journalists. At the same time, I started my series of comments here about the BBC. And Donald Trump at this point is just making this grand gesture by going after what is the very heart of the English language media, the BBC. And the BBC has already blinked a little bit because he understands that this is the BBC that's publicly funded. The BBC is constantly has to go through cycles of re-upping its funding, redirecting its those who lead it. Trump understands the BBC is at a weak point right now. Trump also understands right now he needs some good headlines. He's a year into an extremely chaotic presidency in the United States, so he's going to go after the BBC. That's what he's done. And that's where we are right now. So that's just some context following Uchenna of what was said before. I just want to wrap it up quickly here with this friend of mine, and this is also how rough and rugged these cases get. A friend of mine, I'll say that he's based in Asia because that's where he is based. I won't get into it any more than that. However, it was a case of he and three other journalists at the publication that he works at. It was probably over 2.5 years. They did a lot of reporting on a large real estate, a section of a country where there was real estate growth. So they reported intensely on bad real estate deals, corruption in the real estate sector. Now, this is where the slaps get fascinating, right? Because oftentimes in these situations, and I've got old friends at the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists, ICIJ, right? You start to look at really dirty real estate. Donald Trump comes from what world? Oh, yes, the world of dirty real estate. You start to look at that, and those are the folks who are really sophisticated at moving your LLCs around, at money laundering, at hiding money, all the things that journalists also at times have a hard time reporting. It's hard to report on this stuff, and it's hard to get common folks interested in like money laundering. We know that journalists, we understand that money laundering is at the center of so much power, but it's really hard to write about in a way that common folks are going to get it. Like, what does that really mean? So in Asia, friend of mine, dear friend of mine, guy's even an old war correspondent too, so a really calm character, used to dealing with difficult stuff. They do, 2.5 years of reporting on this situation. They understand slowly it comes through that, in fact, who is the money person? Who's the real cash guy? The real money person in this story is connected to the ruling family of the country where they're reporting on. So there you go. It's Uchenna, this is a problem that we have, used to be a problem in Africa that was then a problem in Asia. Now it's a problem in America with someone like Don Trump, right? The world. As Professor Pavlik there was talking about the globalization of our problems, the globalization of our criminal problems. So my friend, they get a slap gets blasted into the side of their publication and them, he and three other journalists. He's like, he had to leave the country where he had been based. I think he had been based there on and off for 14 years. So he has to pack up very quickly one afternoon because he also is good enough to the ground that he realizes I'm hearing that they're going to come after me and potentially just grab me and arrest me. So
then can we have some time to have Q&A before some of these other people in other parts of the world go to bed?
Absolutely. Sure. I'll just finish Uchenna then. I'll just wrap it up by saying that they got the case was recently dismissed because this person who was connected to the family, the ruling family, disappeared and either disappeared and is now in hiding in China, or it's thought that he may have been thrown out of a helicopter into the jungle of the country that he was in because the case was starting to hit too many people's reputations. So that's how difficult slaps are, Uchenna. Thank you very much.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Quite frankly, there are people, I just saw that Etishan Shahid from United Arab Emirates has joined us, and he will also want to make some comments. But before that, I would like us to have some questions for these three panelists for us to have a sense of what we are discussing And I also want to also mention Professor Augustine Okereke, the immediate past provost of McGivers College in City University of New York. He is here. And Dr. Sirajo Yakubu. He is the head of International Relations and Law at Nile University in Abuja, Nigeria. So, gentlemen, I welcome you guys. Let me start with the question, really. I have a question for Lina. Going by what you have seen around the world in terms of SLAPP, and of course, in the United States, there are measures or rather efforts, to promote anti-SLAPP legislations, about 31 states, according to Reporters Committee for Freedom of the Press, about 31 states within the US have really, put in place anti-SLAPP legislations. I don't know what you're seeing around the world under the umbrella of UNESCO from the research you have done so far, because it will be interesting to see what's happening in other countries, because this is a very, dangerous trend. Because most of these, all these legislation, all these litigations, some of them know they won't win, and there is nothing just to harass and intimidate, most of the time. So I'd like to hear from you. Then if there are other questions, please, can you follow after her response? Go
Yeah,
ahead.
thank you. And it's been super interesting to hear. I mean, everyone's touching on so many really pertinent and relevant things that we as UNESCO are very interested in. Regarding the global kind of presence and distribution of SLAPPs and the rise of SLAPPs. So the the survey we initially did was it was a stepping stone. It was a roadmap to see where we could concentrate our efforts and continue our work. There are some regions in the world which have way higher rates of SLAPPs, Latin American being one of them. And we're really following this identification of the trend, because really it wasn't set on a global agenda beforehand. We know, also, I don't know who's working in law. I used to work in law. And we know SLAPPs when we see it. They existed before, the UN started talking about it, regional bodies started talking about it. But really on an international on the international level, there's been a recent recognition for these SLAPPs. And so we've noticed that in some regions it's particularly strong. And actually, what is guiding us very recently, and I can't quite disclose the full report yet, but there's something called the World Trends Report on freedom of expression, and I'm happy to share. It will come out in 2 weeks. I took note of it. And I'm happy to share it with you, and please disseminate to everyone here today, which really gives an overview on the trends by distribution of freedom of expression around the world by region. But broadly speaking, I think a lot of what everyone has said here today is really reflected in this report. So it's good to know, it's affirming, right, that we're all what we're working on is backed up by data and vice versa, and we're working towards the same agenda, I guess. But really, the impacts of that have been outlined in the report, an increase in self-censorship of the media. So, the impact of that is that in certain these regions where it's these SLAPPs are going with impunity, other media members then are afraid or engage in self-censorship practices. There's an increase, a general trend, an increase of government restrictions on media. And in line with that, there's a decrease in academic and cultural freedom of expression, which I think was talked about today. And so these are overall trends that regionally break down, which I will include in the report that we send to you. And so it creates a very chilling impact. But I wanted to just not be so negative and say that piggybacking off this idea of opportunity for innovation, I think that as new technologies are coming up, as these new challenges are coming up, we are adapting, we are bringing together, we are convening, and we're moving as fast as possible over here. Really setting the tone as much as possible. This is a very quickly emerging challenge. It's very dynamic, especially what was talked about with AI. And so, working with different duty bearers to best identify, which stage of the legal process, can we educate and work with actors in order to best enable them to identify slaps when they happen, the effects of slaps also beforehand, so what I was saying, the release of personal information, deep fakes, technology facilitated gender-based violence, that kind of sometimes can bleed into the courtrooms as a way to target journalists, kind of working with different stakeholders so that we're able to catch them as much as possible before it gets too arduous for the journalists. And so as UNESCO, we've been working, I skipped over this earlier, but we've been working with, for the past 10 years, more than 36,000 judges, 13,000 police officers, on these issues, very concretely. And I'll also share with you a link to something called the Global Media Defense Fund, which is a UNESCO fund which provides support to lawyers specifically encountering journalists with cases relating to freedom of expression, slaps, etc. I'll provide that information in just a moment. But UNESCO is very engaged on these issues. I'm very curious to hear what you all have had to say today. It's been very interesting for us to hear this. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And who else has a question? Because in Paris, I think it should be almost getting late now. So
5:30.
5:30. Okay, so do we have any questions or comments?
Yes. Hello, Dr. Ekwo.
Go ahead.
Hello, that's me. That's comment and other question. Having listened to the presentation, I just want to make a comment on or something that just want to bring to the fore pertaining to the developing world, Africa particularly, and just want to zero in on Nigeria. I heard the last two speakers. Quite interesting, the influence of digital communications now, and now how it's helped to propagate information. Speaking from the point of view of Nigeria, what I've noticed, being involved, going through the social media, Facebook, Instagram. Unlike before, where the news is concentrated, now I think everybody makes news. People have their reels, people, on Facebook, Instagram, and are all making their points, which wasn't so before. So I would say positively, digital technology is helping with communication, with propagating information. And I think this is something we may have to look at too. But on the other hand, negatively, I noticed, anytime I visit Nigeria or speak with my colleagues in Nigeria, they get their news from that social media. And most often, these are people who ordinarily, are not anywhere close to making any factual news. And so that becomes a problem because once they get that information from the media, from the social media, it is believed. And it's kind of problematic, why those are the ones we listen to. And there is the absence of, I don't know, Dr. Crow might want to chime in here, there's the absence of the universities of higher education in social media. That space, needs to be occupied because most people get their information from those boys, even those in the bushes, they, propagate every information and people believe. And so we have to be mindful of that. However, I would say that, the media, digital technology has helped in propagating information. Before it used to be government. But what I would like to, I heard the UN representative give report from other areas. You may want to look in how the governments in Nigeria or how the governments in the developing world are really slapping down on digital technology information. I think having followed that, listening to, not deeply though, that I think there's a new legislation passed in Nigeria in terms of punishment for spreading information on for whoever. And so people kind of getting afraid of criticizing the government because, they might be taken to court and jailed. But I think, these are areas that we may want to look at, look at the developing worlds, how the so-called democracy are becoming very, very autocratic digitally. And just want to thank Dr. Eko for this. And I hope that maybe sometime in the future, we need to have a kind of conference around this impact of media, particularly in the developing world, and how we can assist them, the UN can assist them in ensuring that there's kind of freedom of speech and the governments do not bring legislation that will suppress their speeches, their freedom. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much for that perspective. The interesting thing too is, well, all of us are from all parts of the world, north, south, and east and west. So I also expect to hear from Shahid from UAE and Im Jong-won from Malaysia. But meanwhile, Lena, will you have some thoughts on what Professor Kreke just said?
Yeah, I do. No, I mean, I only talked about a little section on slaps, but actually, I mean, yeah, so UNESCO is really aware of the impacts of social media, digital platforms, and how they interact with freedom of expression and access to information. And I think to sum up a lot of work into maybe a minute or so, we do work with different stakeholders in order to best ensure, like, so what we were saying with what we do with judges and police and lawyers, we also do that with the different tiers relating to social media. So a lot of the times it's working to advocate for certain standards that governments can adopt in relation to digital platforms in order so that social media is enabling for freedom of expression and access to information. So I can send in 2023, UNESCO produced, it was with the consultation of over, I think it was 10,000 or 11,000 stakeholders, the guidelines for the governance of digital platforms. And so this kind of served as a roadmap for UNESCO's advocacy with different member states as to how, on a top-down level, governments can work with digital platforms in order to make sure that these spaces, online spaces, are best promoting freedom of expression. There's also other avenues that we work with. So we recognize that, for example, during times of elections, it's the prevalence of mis and disinformation can really have an impact on the information sphere during elections. And the information sphere is more fragile than ever during elections. And so recognizing that UNESCO works a lot with different actors in order to, even in their work, best promote information integrity during kind of times of government transition, let's say. And so, I mean, we work with journalists, we work with kind of media newsrooms, we work with regulators in order to ensure that as many parties as possible understand the importance of information online in the day-to-day life and also during particular moments such as elections or demonstrations or times of crises. And so we work frequently with that, recognizing that, it's an ongoing game, right? Because, governments will do something that's unpredictable or something will happen that's unpredictable. And then, or a new technology will come out that changes the landscape. And so we work constantly with capacity building, advocacy, in order to make sure that as many stakeholders concerned are engaged on this. And lastly, we also, it's not just about stakeholders, it's about people themselves. And so UNESCO does a lot of work with engagement with youth through, for example, media and information literacy or media information literacy campaigns in order to ensure that the users of social media are best equipped with the knowledge and skill sets in order to encounter disinformation on social media online. So yes, I'll send the guidelines shortly.
Great. Thank you so much. Let me also recognize Professor Uoma Uche, who is the Deputy Vice Chancellor of Gregory University in Uturu, Imo State. Meanwhile, do we have any other questions? Because I can assure you that Lina is really, you know, she's an expert in this field, quite frankly, and with multiple degrees from Concordia University, the University of British Columbia, and Sciences Po in Paris. She has actually demonstrated her expertise in political studies. She has had a lot of research in these areas, international relations and affairs, and of course, deep experience spanning from United Nations Security Council, peace building, human rights and humanitarian action, diplomacy and international law. So you can't get a better person really to discuss some of these issues. So Lina, I'm so grateful that you're able to share some thoughts. If there are other comments or questions, please, I think she's generous enough to, sacrifice extra time in the office to talk to us. So Lina, if you have any other comments or questions, please go ahead.
No, just thank you so much for having me here. And please feel free. I can put my email down if you ever have any questions to ask. And also, please feel free to look at the resources I've shared. So thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. So thank you so much. And let's we may have to take a break, or if we have a lot of energy, we can just continue. Shahid, are you on? Ehsan Shahid from United Arab Emirates. Are you there? I saw you a short while ago. What about Im Jong-won? Im. Hello? Im Jong-won? Oh, I'm sure he has gone to sleep because he should have.
No. I can hear you. I can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, but I'm about to sleep.
I know it's
But
about it's 12 midnight over there, right?
12:40.
12:40. Okay, to 1 a.m. Oh my God, sorry about that. So go ahead.
No, it's okay. But can I ask one question?
Yes, go ahead.
But I think Miss Lena already has left, right?
She's still here, but I don't know whether she'll be able to take care. Go ahead with question. We can, see if some of us can handle that. Go ahead.
Because I work as a program manager at AIBD, and I previously worked for over 10 years at public media institution in Korea. And now at AIBD, I conduct media training programs for public broadcasters across 26 countries in Asia Pacific region. At AIBD, we are also organizing a series of workshops across the Asia Pacific region in collaboration with UNESCO under the theme Empowering Women Journalists. So maybe Ms. Lena Fox may already be familiar with these initiatives. I'm not sure whether she knows or not, but I think that there are some problems about UNESCO's workshop because the topic of UNESCO workshop appear diverse, but in reality, they mainly urge media organizations to strengthen their internal regulations to better protect journalists. I'm wondering whether these workshops are truly effective if they only educate journalists themselves rather than involving media managers or safety officials responsible for internal regulations. At the same time, I believe that ensuring journalist safety goes beyond individual precautions and ultimately requires stronger legal protections from the countries where journalists operate. So does UNESCO have efforts to pressure other countries to ensure the safety of all journalists? As someone as I worked at South Korea, I have never witnessed such pressure from UNESCO when working as a journalist there. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I'm not quite aware of this specific, I don't know if it's with the IPDC, and I can ask my colleagues. But I wanted to speak to more broadly the workshops with journalists, because I agree with you, having just a workshop for improving safety mechanisms just for like reporting level journalists doesn't enact change. And so I completely agree with that. So I can't speak to this workshop in particular, but I can speak for kind of other examples of what we've worked on is regarding safety training. So a lot of UNESCO's workshops in different countries, we make an effort to make sure that they are with higher level media managers. So just for example, I was on mission in Bangladesh a month and a half ago, and we convened the top newsrooms and their managers from all of Bangladesh to ensure that really the practices that we were trying to replicate and encourage were kind of more from an internal top-down perspective, because we understand in the newsroom that if an editor doesn't want something, or if a certain HR policy is a certain way, that has implications on journalists, and sometimes they're afraid within the workplace to even advocate for that. And so in terms of systemic change, we often work to advocate with mid-level or higher level media managers in order that they actually incorporate what we're trying to work for into the newsrooms, and then and to ensure sustainability. Sustainability is definitely something that we really are acutely aware of. Promoting freedom of expression is a very broad mandate. Like, how do you measure that? And so there's a lot of indicators that we work towards and strive in order that we kind of consider as a sustainable marker. So for example, with our work on police, we ensure we're working in different countries to promote codes of conduct and module development in different training academies for the police and judges, and so that they are able to understand the international standards that their countries have signed on to, and understand the parameters and the responsibilities that come with being a duty bearer in that situation. And so these modules are, we aim to have them replicated across every single judicial or police cadet training institute in the country. Most recently, it was done in Greece, Namibia, and then the Philippines. There was actually one that was done last year, a code of conduct on freedom of expression to be replicated, a rule across all of the police. And then there was a specialized one to be developed ahead of elections on police media conduct ahead of elections. So we try to work on both sides with ensuring the sustainability on a person-to-person institutional level. So we work with that. We also work kind of at a very top level. We have signed memorandums of understandings with almost every single regional court in the world in order to ensure that they're engaged with us on these issues. And so we definitely understand the long-term need for this practice. Like I said, it's a very dynamic situation. So just as we, achieve, all of the work that we've done on technology facilitated gender-based violence, a lot of it has quickly become changing, right? With the development of ChatGPT and kind of those things. So we've had to really adapt very quickly. For example, ethical journalist coverage and standards for ethical journalist coverage in newsrooms. What we did 3 years ago does not apply today on social media, for example. So we work very constantly, as much as we can, with at the request of different member states to do that. But please send me the workshop, and I'm happy to discuss further.
Okay, thank you so much. We really appreciate your thoughts. Imjowan, I guess you got it right, but we can always share some of this information. I'll share her email so they can also contact her for
Thank
further
you.
details. So, do you have some thoughts about what's going on in in Malaysia or South Korea, either where you are already, where you operate from, about the intimidation of reporters and journalists and all, especially within the broadcast realm.
Well,
Come, keep your thoughts. Professor John Pavlik, I don't know whether he's still here. So remember some of those questions related to technology, use of technology and communications as well. That's his expertise. I will appreciate if you can also chime in on that.
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was thinking about the possibilities because it's something that I think is so valuable from an educational point of view that I can bring some of these ideas to my students. So I think that the intersection of collaboration and what we can do with the emerging new tools of, I'll use artificial intelligence just as a starting point, I think presents tremendous possibilities. I did a project, this was 20 years ago, so it was pre, all of this, but it was to help build a network of journalists in South Africa, where Rutgers, my university, was involved in research and science journalism. And so I spent time over there helping build a network of journalists who are working in the arena of science journalism, especially the Large Southern Telescope, but also other aspects of that. And now with AI, I think the potential to create a system that would utilize what you might call a custom GPT, a tool that's designed specifically for a specific area and application and tasks that could help to facilitate building and maintaining a robust network, because it's one of the biggest problems is how do you build a network and how do you maintain it. And I think that journalists who share interest in different arenas could work collaboratively on stories that might transcend borders, and fueled by the possibilities of using AI as a news gathering tool. I point to the recent case in the Pulitzer Prizes. Pulitzer Prize went to the Wall Street Journal in 2025 for a report that it did using AI as a research tool and as a tool for developing analysis of 41,000 tweets on X about the transformation of Elon Musk from business to politics over a 5-year period from 2019 to 2024 would have been impossible. And this was a project that was done collaboratively with 2 other news organizations and journalists. So I think the possibility of doing more cross-border journalism collaboratively and supported by AI as a research tool and as a communication as a way to facilitate communication. I think that's one area where I think there's an opportunity for news organizations to kind of, I don't want to say fight back, but to use these tools to their advantage to do quality journalism, but in a way that requires fewer economic resources because they simply don't have the funding to support expensive journalism. But this could be a way to leverage existing resources.
Oh, thank you so much. Thanks a lot. So are there comments or questions? But again, is there a way you can also touch on the points raised by one of the participants about, especially in emerging democracies like in Africa, where you have all this pervasive digital divide, and a systemic, attempts to use the media, or well, it happens even here though, like what we call digital authoritarianism by the powerful people using the media, social media to either distract or deceive or all this kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean the digital divide is such an enormous problem that's pervasive, and it's really a divide that's based on economics and access, and so the more these technologies develop, the more important it is that everybody that everybody have good access. I think is one of the key issues, and that there's no a simple answer or like magic wand that we can, wave to suddenly make the digital divide go away or reduce it. But there are ways that we can utilize existing tools more efficiently and to give greater access that is less expensive, and tools that are not so expensive to access technology. So I think, I think that would be the avenue that I would pursue, is looking at ways to utilize existing platforms in more efficient fashion, and utilizing existing technologies to leverage better access. Because maybe the big tech would support doing things. There have been efforts in the past. Some of the social platforms have sought to, like Google had Project Loon, which was to provide free internet access. So maybe that's worth revisiting. There might be an opportunity to develop funding for supporting free internet access through some of the big tech platforms. And they might do it as a way to promote what they're doing generally. So, there are those kind of possibilities.
All right, thank you. I think John Kavanagh, who is also a PhD student at University of Cincinnati, he has done a lot of things on digital privacy. I think he has some comments to make in relation to the subject matter you're talking about right now. John Kavanagh, if you're around, you can go on.
Yes, hello. Hey, I'm stepping into a meeting here in 5 minutes, but I did want to say that so I run a nonprofit called the Plunk Foundation, and I'm also in a PhD program. At Plunk, we serve about 30 million people. We work with Child Fund International and various nonprofits, and it's an issue of technology, especially as USAID has slashed a lot of funding. And journalism kind of falls into that bucket where there are people on shoestring budgets reporting in a relatively dangerous environment that doesn't have a lot of internet, and there's not a lot of digital literacy, and then there's not a lot of digital protection that exists. So a few things that you've mentioned are really important about, like, how do we create a system, and AI can be a part of that. You can build privacy-centric and safe AI tools. We knew how to do it 60 years ago. It's just that the current way that it's built has been through a lot of grifting and a lot of other, marketing tactics. But there are safe and explainable ways to build it that can protect journalists. The other thing that you mentioned about, like, having big tech as a part of it, I'm a little wary on it. I like open source tools. So one that was really big was Signal. And Signal, before it became Signal, was actually given $2 million by the Freedom of the Press Foundation to build an open source system called Open Whisper Systems, where people could communicate. And they did it in fully end-to-end encryption. I have even seen on WhatsApp that journalists have gotten arrested because of the data that's on WhatsApp. And the big tech companies, they submit to governments. It's in their contracts that they submit to the government. If the government wants access to something, they have access to it. And while WhatsApp has protected chats, what's not protected is the call logs. And the call logs they can send to governments, and people have actually been arrested for calling certain people, in a corrupt trial that has given them enough evidence to imprison people. So I think a lot of times, yes, AI can be used safely and securely. And two, I think the open source tools are really important for journalists to have access to, but they need to be very simple and easy to use as well.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, John.
Yeah.
I guess that Chibwala Sewamba from Zambia, are you on the line? So I really thank everyone really for your time and a very insightful conversation so far. And at the end of the day, we'll articulate these points and share with every one of us. And the next session, of course, we'll just want to look at legal literacy for independent journalists, practical tools for navigating defamation threats and ownership pressures. This is really, really very important. And Attorney Sulamba will be joining us. And again, also, the fact that Trump, for example, is suing ABC is as a result of maybe other choice of words, the way Judge Stephanopoulos used assault versus, rape or something. If you looked at that So sometimes some little legalese or some little errors can really land us into trouble as reporters. So we must be mindful of that, of all those minefields, especially in situations where there is criminal defamation, where they are criminalizing defamation and all that kind of stuff. So you want to also learn a few things about libel laws as it relates to your own environment, your own country. Because even when I teach like media ethics, I talk about how, of course, every society is different. I always emphasize on situational ethics. The way it's applicable in your own country or your region, it might be different from the others. So as you can see, this global phenomenon, this global problem is all over the place, but how do we develop measures to deal with this? Like I just mentioned a short while ago about anti-SLAPP legislation that exists within 31 states in the United States. I'm not familiar with other countries, whether they have such efforts, such legislation to make sure that you don't just intimidate reporters. And some of these anti-SLAPP legislation, one good thing about it is that if someone brings a frivolous lawsuit just to intimidate you, and you spend money to go through the court sessions and all that, that person will ultimately pay you. So it's a way of disincentivizing people who orchestrate some measure of frivolous lawsuits just to intimidate you, to know that they have to pay a cost at the end of the day. They pay your entire bills and all that. So, and every country may also have its own specific ways of dealing with such a problem. So those are some of the things we would like to look at, from the legal perspective. And some of us who are also practitioners will also bring some other experiences in terms of, how to navigate this minefield that we see that exists in information flow, so to speak, And this is a growing problem as we grow. So are there comments or other contributions anyone would want to make or questions? Otherwise, we'd like to take a break and maybe come back like in 20, 30 minutes to hear from other speakers. I don't know whether what's his name? If Shahid is available, or Professor Uwoma, do you have some comments to make? Hello? Well, in the absence of any other comments or questions, let's reconvene at 12:30 and try to wrap up quickly on some of these discussions. Thank you so much for your patience and for your participation. I also want to thank very profusely Professor Pavlik. You have always been very, very, supportive of us, and we can't thank you enough for sharing your thoughts and rich knowledge in the evolving media landscape defined by technology. Thank you so much. I also want to thank Lena, if he's still around. So thank you also for your time. And Im Jong-won, you can now go to sleep. It's now almost 1 a.m. in Malaysia. Thank you so much. Thank you, guys. So we'll reconvene in 12:30. Thanks.
Thank you, Chena.
All right. Dan Boylan, thank you so much also for participating and sharing your wide experience. So I'm sure you also share more of your experience in terms of how to avoid some of these pitfalls. You really mentioned a whole lot of them from your experience in AP and other platforms, and even from the perspective of State Department as well. So we would like to learn some, best practices to overcome this, because I can assure you this will continue. It's not just going to end, because one of the things I learned in journalism school is, everybody in government or rich people, they want to cover stuff, but the job of the journalist is to uncover what they want to cover. And within that kind of, there's always a conflict. So they'll find ways of, doing this, okay? So you see, like you mentioned, Jeff Bezos, when he took over Washington Post, he promised not to get involved in the editorial decisions. But we saw what happened, prior to the election. He couldn't even allow them to endorse any candidates, so that's an interference right there. And that's ownership, because he's, if you defied him, he'll fire you. I think there was even a reporter that left because of one of our reporters, one of our reporting that perhaps challenged the authorities. So those are the kind of things we experience from time to time. All right. So thank you, guys. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, Remy is also here. Remy, thank you so much for joining.
Good afternoon.
I salute you.
Why is everyone leaving? Sorry.
No, we just want to have a break. We started 10:30, so I wanted to have a break and come back 12:30.
Okay.
Oh, Christopher, you're here.
Dr. Christabel, how are you? Good to see you.
Dr. Noble,
I'm fine.
please, Dr. Noble, you should be able to explain to us about the implications of this conversation in terms of women issues in your research.
I didn't prepare for that, doctor. I'm still on my computer, so that's why I'm not showing my face.
No,
But I thought I'll join. So
you don't have to be prepared. After all,
I don't want to show my face. That's the issue.
no problem.
That's it.
What I've been saying is that you should share what you're finding in your research that is related to our discussion. That's what I'm saying.
Okay. I'll see if I can talk. I'm trying to follow through. That's why I was wondering why you were telling Dambula, and then this is what we see. Then bye. So what's happening?
No, we just want to have a brief. You know how it is when.
Right. Okay.
In weeks that we started exactly 3:30. I mean 10:30. So that's like
wow.
We started exactly 10:30. Even the lady from France, then I had to spend extra time, because I was conscious of her own time because she had to leave her office and all that. So
okay.
Yes. So she, as you can see, we spent like 1.5 hours. So we'll come back again and wrap up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Salaku.
Yes, ma'am. How are you?
I'm fine.
Good to see you.
Doctor,
Honestly, it's been a while, man. I was telling Christopher the other day that I was supposed to call you every time. Sometimes I get late and too many activities this semester. And I know you're always busy too.
It's very busy.
No, you're always busy.
Overnight at Scotland till last night.
Yeah, I just got back last night.
Oh wow! I wish I.
It was snowing.
I'm talking about. Wow.
That was a very good forum. I enjoyed it, right?
Yes, that's good. Very, very good.
I wish on Friday I've left on Saturday, but that was good. It just pained me that I wasn't there throughout.
Well, at least you were able to make your presentation. Also, you made some network.
Yeah, I made some network. I enjoyed it. It was so warm, Very warm people.
Yes.
We'll say thank you to Dr. Ibidapo.
No problem. So we look forward to your active participation.
Okay.
Yes. All right.
Thank you. Let
me
of this thing. Any other? I enjoyed it seriously. I really did.
Yes. Sure. I'll be in touch and I'll forward you Dr. Ibipo's contact.
Okay.
What was the forum all about?
Yes.
New York African Studies Association.
Oh, in Kenya?
No, it was New York State wide conference.
Oh, okay.
You see, lady, that one that came from Africa, the one in the media. I forgot. I wanted to get a contact, connect with her. The one that she's in the media. She does what Karim used to do.
Oh, I don't know. Maybe okay. So you can talk to me later.
I'll talk to you later.
Yes, no problem. Dr. Uche, I'm preparing to go to work, so I'll be logging off. Maybe by the time you come back from your break, maybe another half an hour after that.
Okay. Listen, when are we need to, okay, I'll call you later let's see how we can meet before maybe Thanksgiving possibly. I don't know.
No problem. All right.
Okay, I'll be in the city okay, I'll call you though. I'll just call you.
No problem. Okay, enjoy your break.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
When is the reconvening, Doc?
12:30.
Okay. All right. Oh, it's almost there. Okay, later then.
All right.
Bye.
Hey, my brother, how you doing? How are you? So, hello, okay, yeah, we'll have you like in the next 20 minutes. We're on break now. Yes, so, yeah. Uh, all right, okay. All right, bye. Okay. Hello?
Yeah, Dr. Uchenna, we are here.
Yeah, Dr. Siraji Yakubu. So
Yes.
I think we are going to start essentially, and I think it'll be very vital in this conversation, specifically because we are going to be looking at, practical tools for navigating defamation threats, and ownership pressures, in the media. Why this is also because our conversation today, of course, like you can see, has a lot of legal implications, you know, for so many reasons. So I'll be interested in Chibwala Sowamba from Zambia is also joining us. He's also an attorney.
Recording in progress.
He's also an attorney and a journalist himself. So I also like to get some of your takes in terms of how um, reporters can overcome some of these challenges. Because, like I said earlier on, it's something that we are not, it's an emerging thing. People are not familiar with it, but it's something that we're going to have to live with, you know. And the earlier we develop some strategies to take care of that, the better. So that's why I'm interested in learning from all of us, what legal steps or some ways to overcome um, some of these issues that we've been talking about today. It's a minefield, so we need to have some legal literacy for journalists, both independent and practicing journalists. And what I also find in the literature as well is not many media organizations have enough money to, for example, to have liability insurance protections, you know. So that's an additional burden. It's also one thing perhaps they will advise you to have. But I also know that especially in most among within poor media outfits or startups and stuff like that, they are still battling on how to pay salaries, how to operational costs and all that. Now you add that to add legal issues and all these insurance things to the mix, and that makes it difficult for them to be able to function. So I would like to get like your take, especially given your own background. I will bring some other issues as we discuss, but let's hear from you, Dr. Siraj Yakubu. Hello? Is this frozen? Hello?
Hello, Dr. Uchenna, thank you very much.
Yes.
Yes, I think what media need to do, actually, the media as a field, as a business, as whatsoever, needs to do in the circumstance is to make sure that whatever, especially the conventional media, like the BBC's case with Trump, I think what they need to do actually is to make sure that, one, if they are hearing any news, any information, it should be factual, something that someone cannot deny. They should always be mindful of what can constitute defamation and how to, legally speaking, another way of getting around is for the media houses to get experts who can analyze an incident that happened or a news item that is very vital for people to know what really happened. If they do that, then the libel may not be, I mean, the suit may not be directly against them. It may be against the person if the person has crossed the red tape for his statements to constitute defamation. But I believe if they're experts, hardly they will cross the line. And even if they cross the line, it depends whether the person, I mean, the commentator has deep pocket or not, because and he's standing in the society, because this strategic litigation to prevent people from public participation, I think can work more on very senior public figures, politicians and co, whom they know that litigation of such nature can actually cause them some disruption, or the person is a deep pocket, who I think will be mindful of is the damages that he may be asked to pay in the event that the court decide that yes, he has defamed the plaintiff. So I think these are those. But generally speaking, the media, I think, like the topic suggested, even in democracy, like the media, I mean, politicians are trying to clip the wings of the politicians. If you take, for example, here in Nigeria, media houses, I mean, you know, at one point or the other, or every now and then, they find out that they are sued in court for a news item they have aired, and the plaintiff will be demanding a huge amount of money that the media house, with all its assets and human resources combined together, will not be able to satisfy such kind of damages. So you can see clearly that the plaintiff knew that such damages are disproportionate, they are outrageous, but they do it in order to distract the media houses and then to put them in a very disadvantaged position. And that is not very good for our democracy anywhere in the world, because democracy underpins freedom of press, freedom of expression. Without that, then there will be no real democracy, actually. And with regard to Nigeria, we need to enact this anti-SLAPP legislation so that we know that the law of tort is there to guide or to regulate I mean, what people say or what people do against others. But again, if that is, if the law of tort is being exploited to damage the very fabrics of democracy, then we need legislation that to stipulate or that to regulate litigation of such nature. The law should tell us the threshold that a statement may reach before it can become defamation. And may even if that is taught law of torts, because there is a lot of cases that have determined that the anti-SLAPP legislation can simply peg amount of damage that anybody can request from the court, can demand the court to impose on the.
Wow. Oh, we lost Dr. Yakubu. Well, I think we have Chibwala Siwamba, who is from Zambia. He is an attorney and a journalist as well, and a diplomat indeed. So he wears three hats. And if you're on, we missed the opening session or the first segment where we had a lot from the UNESCO headquarters in Paris and Professor Pavlik as well. The issue is some of these strategic lawsuits against public participation. That's what we're discussing. But right now, we've identified that this is a common trend. So we're trying to look at how we can develop some practical tools to navigate the defamation threats by billionaires, the elite, and the courts. So, from the Southern African perspective, what is the situation there? Do you have experiences in terms of how journalists are threatened by courts? And what would be your suggestions in terms of how to navigate those minefields? Chibola, the floor is yours. Hello? Mr. Siwamba? Go ahead.
Yes, good evening.
Go ahead.
Good evening, Dr. Oka.
Yes.
I apologize for joining late. It's raining heavily here in Lusaka, Zambia, and therefore having a bit of connectivity challenges at present. And I'm glad to join the conversation. Let me thank the other participants that have spoken before me for very rich conversations and points that have been raised. As you have reported, I wear a couple of hats. I've practiced as a journalist myself, served in diplomatic service, and of course, practicing as the legal practitioner. So from my perspective, I would say there is from time to time a conflict between the media and the public in general, which spill over to go into court proceedings. And of course, there have been instances where media practitioners have been taken to court primarily to do with defamation law, for instance, where some individuals feel the media has overstepped its boundary in its reporting, and therefore they seek the intervention of the courts. Hello, can you get me?
Yes, go ahead.
Sorry, the line is breaking. Yeah,
oh,
so
we're hearing you.
Yes. Yeah. So, but of course, there are instances where some journalists have complained that the penalties that are meted out by the courts go over and above what is expected. And as the earlier panelists indicated, gave the example of Nigeria, where he was saying that some of the fines that are meted out on media houses that are seen to have violated defamation laws, for instance, are too high to an extent that they appear to be meant to cripple the media of the freedom of expression. And you find that I think that is generally the situation in many parts of Africa, Southern Africa included, where media laws sometimes appear to be too stringent and stifling the work of the media practitioners, and indeed, generally members of the public, stifling them from openly speaking out or raising issues of concern to the public. And in that vein, my considered view is that there has to be a balancing act in terms of the role of the media for them to be able to report freely vis-a-vis the rights of individuals, especially those that hold public office or indeed political office and the like, those that particularly whose official responsibilities have a bearing on the on the public to ensure that as much as individuals would like to have their privacy, would like not to be reported on in a negative way that is detrimental or injurious to their reputation, there is need to have a consideration that the media, as the fourth estate, its main role is to reflect what is happening in society, and indeed, in some instances, in reflecting what is happening in society, it could appear to be injurious to certain individuals. And therefore, there is need for those that take up, for instance, public office to have a thick skin, because the scrutiny that comes from the media mainly is meant to provide the checks and balances for the greater good of the public. And I do not think in most instances, media practitioners report for their own benefit or meant to injure the people they report on or events they report on, but to reflect what is happening in society and for the greater good of the public. So there's need generally for that balancing act to be achieved. But having said that, we have seen a growing trend of individuals that may not really have sufficient understanding of the workings of the media, who carry out, who portray themselves as media practitioners when in fact they are not. While appreciating the importance of citizen journalism, there is need also to acknowledge the fact that a number of people that are not trained or do not have the full understanding of what journalism is, that go over and beyond and become injurious, report in a manner that is injurious. And that has dented to a certain degree legal practitioners or media practitioners. Because in the eyes of the public, whoever has a microphone, whoever has a phone is filming and doing this and that, is reporting on something, they are considered to be journalists. So you find that if anything goes wrong, the public raises alarm to say the levels of journalism have gone down. When in fact, it may not be the case. The truth might be that it's citizen journalists that are not following the ethical considerations that are taught in journalism school, that are taken into consideration in a media house, a proper media house. Because proper media houses, and indeed in journalism school, you are taught about the ethics, you are taught about media law. So you find that those that have been trained as journalists, their delivery of news or whatever packages they share with the public or whatever they write, they have that at the back of their mind, that they have to observe media laws and other laws applicable. They have to follow the ethical considerations and the like. However, that is not applicable to many vloggers out there and bloggers out there. Those that just report because they have a passion about reporting, or they're excited to see a particular event, and for them they would want to publicize it. So you find that a trained journalist, for instance, if they find a scene of accident, the way they'll report it will be in such a way that they do not violate the rights or the privacy of individuals that have been involved in that accident, or children that have been, for instance, raped or defiled or assaulted in any way. They'll blare off the face to ensure that the dignity of that child is protected. But individuals that do not have proper training will violate that. And you find that sometimes these individuals that violate media laws, these individuals that violate media ethics, when they're taken to court to substantiate what they have reported on, everyone will say, oh, journalists, it's the standards of journalism that have gone down, or journalists are reporting badly, they have to be regulated, they have to be penalized, and things like that. So you find that sometimes the penalties could be very harsh. And in the eyes of the public, they'll say, oh, it's because this is a journalist has been mistreated and the like, or the courts have made it out a penalty that is too stiff and things like that. But there is no consideration of the fact that perhaps these individuals did not follow the media laws and they went over the boundaries. Dr. Chena, that will be my contribution for now. I hope I was able to respond to your question as you asked. In case there's need for clarification or for me to better package my response, kindly be free to pose that question to me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Like some of you are also joining. Yeah, Chibola is a journalist, he's an attorney, he's a diplomat. He has so many combinations. They actually doing a whole lot of work in Lusaka, Zambia. So we thank you for your intervention. And we can also discuss further on this. Like what we are looking at are now, some providing some legal literacy for journalists, really, in terms of how to navigate this minefield. That just like every other challenges that exist in the profession, also, or even citizens generally. Like now, everyone is a reporter, but the thing is that, like one guy said, everyone is a reporter, but no one is an editor. Everybody can just like what Siwamba just talked about, about some measure of training that can help you understand that you have to be very conscious of the sensibilities of your audience. He just cited an instance of reporting an accident. The basic so-called citizen journal will just share it in WhatsApp and over without considering the impact of showing gory details and all that, what it will have on the psyche of even young kids or other people who might watch that. Sometimes viewer discretion advised in certain sensitive reporting on conventional media outfits, but then we live in a fragmented media space, and some of these things also can be a factor in reporting a couple of things. And like some of the things I pointed out in the literature as well, one major tool really to navigate these challenges, one of them is training. It is absolutely necessary that media houses educate their staff on defamation laws, privacy, and responsible communication. You see, like I was invited to speak at, huh? 1 second. Yeah, I have you joined? Well, okay, 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 no problem. So you can join in now, and then we just make some intervention, then we'll continue the conversation. I was just making a speech when you called. All right. Okay, 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 all right, sure. Sorry, guys. So when I was invited to speak on African journalism at the what's it called, Montclair University. So we had this debate about First Amendment and how, like, First Amendment gives everyone the freedom to be a journalist in the United States, for example. Whereas in some countries, they ask you to have some qualifications to practice. So it's also necessary that I have that training. If you don't have, like Attorney Swamba said, if you don't have basic training about media laws, you won't be able to know even what libel means. You won't understand the implications of how you use your word. Like what happened with George Stephanopoulos, why Trump had to sue or threaten to sue and they had to settle. It was a mere use of wrong choice of words, so to speak, in terms of assault and rape and stuff like that. So being able to know that you can be careful in certain words you use is important. Someone is a convicted felon or someone is um, maybe still in the process. So there are basic things you just have to know to protect you from any potential lawsuit from anybody. That's one. Secondly, I mentioned that about having some kind of libel insurance. It's kind of called somehow business liability insurance. It covers defamation to protect financial protection. I mean, to provide for financial protection against lawsuits. The truth about the matter is that not every reporter, not every news organization is rich enough to be able to provide this kind of insurance. And like most of them are struggling to pay their bills, and you're adding the extra layer of difficulty in their operations. So meanwhile, I'm going to pause because I want to introduce another attorney who incidentally is the son of Michael Gershowitz, whom we named this conference after. Unfortunately, he was deeply in a big activity that he couldn't join, at the beginning of this because I'm sure some of you who have been here, you heard when I was calling him and telling him to let us know when he joins, So the UNESCO representative, she has left, but I'm sure she will see all our reporting eventually. So I would like to introduce Gabriel Gershowitz, the son of Michael Gershowitz, whom we named this conference after. He would like to make
Thank
a few
you.
comments before we continue our conversation. Go ahead, Gabriel.
Thank you so much. And because I'm jumping in the middle of Dr. Ekwo's speech, I'll keep it very brief and personal. I very much want to thank Dr. Ekwo, CMPI, and all of the other sponsors and participants of the conference. I cannot believe that it's going to be 11 years since my father passed away next month on December 21st. It is deeply meaningful for myself and my family that the conference happens every year, and we're overjoyed to be able to support the conference. And I just wanted to thank everyone for being here today, for joining such an impactful event that is named after my father. He would be honored if he knew, and I believe as I look up to the heavens that he does know, that good conversation, dialogue, and learning is happening associated with his good name. So thank you very much. I'll leave it at that, and I'll let you please continue the conference, and I will be a little bit on and off, but I'm looking forward to hearing from everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. So, Attorney Suwamba, the question I also have for you is, do you think that in your country that you're able to have some kind of insurance to protect journalists against some of these frivolous lawsuits or something like that? Is it a possibility?
Thank you very much, Dr. Kuchina. Yes, I think that is a possibility, because I think many professions now are moving towards insuring themselves for any professional challenges they might face. However, this is a novel undertaking. It's something that is really new. I cannot think of any media house that has fully implemented an activity or undertaking like that, whereby they have insured themselves from to protect themselves from liability when it comes up. But I think it is something that is developing, especially from the Western world, and it is our expectation that even in countries like Zambia and the wider Southern Africa, that could be taken on board. The importance of having insurance for a media house, and indeed for the media practitioners, is that it makes the media house and indeed the media practitioners to work in an environment where they're not fearful. It enables them to engage and to report for the greater good of the public without looking over their shoulders that what we're reporting on might cause us problems tomorrow, and we have to look for money and the like to compensate whoever feels injured. But having said that, such an insurance policy may have to be coupled with high degree of responsibility among media houses and indeed their staff, be it media practitioners in general or other staff that they bring on board, for instance, DJs and the like on radio or other presenters. There is need to have that balancing act of people having responsibility, ensuring that they don't abuse the policy. Because the danger is that in some instances, because few people feel they have the protection, they have a safeguard. Sometimes they go overboard because they know whatever happens, it will not be us that will have to foot the bill or to pay the compensation. The insurance company will have to cover this cost or this bill on our behalf. So that will require stringent measures placed by media houses and indeed the insurance policy providers to ensure that there isn't that abuse. But I think it is an undertaking that will go a long way in safeguarding the interests of the media, protecting the properties of the media, because many instances where the media house faults when it's taken to court and the court pronounces itself that what the media house did or what a particular journalist did was injurious to an individual or whoever, or a company or whatever. It's injurious and therefore they have to be compensated to repair their image. So you find that most of the time, because media houses have limited resources, and especially in countries like Zambia and indeed many Southern African countries, and generally I think I can say across the African continent, many media houses do not have a lot of resources. They do not have a lot of funds or assets. So you find that most of the time they end up folding if the compensation that is being demanded is too high. So a policy, an insurance policy can go a long way. But as I said, there's need to have the balancing act.
Right.
In addition to insurance policy, I think they...
Go ahead.
Maybe. Okay. So in addition, further to having an insurance policy, I think it is also incumbent between it is incumbent upon the media houses to also have legal representation, to have a retainer with a law firm or individuals that can provide legal services as and when. A retainer helps a media house to be able to report in a manner that they are not fearful because they know they have legal representation at any point when there's a legal suit that comes up or there's a threat that comes up. The legal practitioners will be available to safeguard the interests of that particular media house. And I've seen that many media houses that have a retainer with reputable law firms, they are generally free and they operate in an environment where they don't really look over their shoulders that what they're doing is wrong. Because they can, if they have a sensitive story, for instance, they can easily reach out to their lawyers to say, kindly go through this story or this particular investigation we're doing. What are some of the pitfalls that could be there that could lead us into trouble with the law, that could lead us into trouble with the defamation law, for instance? So the legal practitioners could easily look through and say, okay, this might be a bit, or this you can get away with it, and the like. So that goes a long way. So as we're looking at insurance policy, I think there is also need to look at issues of having a retainer with legal practitioners to protect the interests of media houses and indeed journalists at large. Thank you very much.
I think that point is really well noted. It's also amongst the tools that in the literature that we suggest reporters should also consider what they call legal audits. And I think having a legal retainer will help to have regular audits to regularly review some policies, contracts, and procedures to identify and mitigate potential risks, that we face every day as reporters. So I think that's a good point. Another important thing that I don't know whether Dan Oyland is... Okay, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to make a comment and just to participate in the discussion. They just listening to the speaker before the last speaker, in terms of, I think from Zimbabwe or Zambia, I think there's a kind of balancing act here, you mentioned media practitioners, the media houses going to school, learning the ethics and the laws. However, on the other hand, too, like I said in the previous session, we have this plethora, a lot of anybody with a microphone, is create news, all right? But however, when you look at the developing countries, I'm sure maybe in his own country too, due to the nature of corruption, most of the media practitioners, media houses get their news from the government. And so they report from the government point of view. So when they receive the brown envelopes or receive money from the government, so the citizens only hears news from these outlets, from the media practitioners, only from the government point of view. And then when you go on where our mostly young men are, TikTok, social media, where they report all kinds of gibberish, I agree. However, they also report the news too. And they report this news that is not just what the government wants them to say. So what kind of education, what kind of education do we prefer? How do we get that balancing act? Knowing that those who have the licenses, those who know the ethics, report only most often from the government point of view. However, when you go on other media platforms, you get the authentic news that may lead to, might be libelous, might lead to legal lawsuits. So in those countries, what are we doing? How do we balance that? How do we ensure that, that news come out accurately, both from the media practitioners and also from those who really report the news as the news is?
I don't know whether Attorney Chibuala want to chime in or Dr. Siraggio, but what I take from you is that...
Thank
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. I totally agree with Dr. Kero to say that sometimes in many instances you find that because of the laws, you find that those that are trained as journalists are fearful. So you find that they have some limitations in terms of how they're going to report and things like that. Whereas individuals, citizens, journalists, if I may say, they do not have that fear, because sometimes out of the ignorance of the laws that are applicable, they just report the way they see it. And in some instances, we have seen that there's a number of stories that have come out of that has come out of from individuals that do not have journalism training per se, and which stories have even ended up in mainstream media, and the media goes to pick those stories because they are seen to be credible. They seem to expose corruption, for instance. They are seen to expose some ills that are obtaining in society. So I really agree. But in the same instance, I think there is need, especially for institutions and civil society organizations, that can also share information about the various laws that are applicable to ensure that individuals that may not have training but have passion for sharing information through the various platforms, and particularly social media platform, TikTok, Facebook, name it, could freely do that. Because over and above, this goes to reinforce the importance of freedom of expression, and for the public to be able to freely participate in national issues pertaining to their communities. So I think it's a matter of having more information shared, especially about legal issues, and law societies, law associations, and other people that are enlightened about the law. They need to share some of this information to also protect these endangered species. I will call them endangered species because some of these share information that is highly credible. They are whistleblowers of key information, but because they do not understand the laws within which they operate in, they are likely to be in danger of being dragged either to court or other tribunals where they are being prosecuted, and in the process you find that others may decide to withdraw and stop participating in sharing of information. So of course we need individuals that have the training, who understand media laws, who understand the ethics of journalism, and if that information can also be shared widely, knowledge imparting, that will go a long way. But as Dr. Uchenna has rightly put it, many of these individuals, they can report on what is obtaining, but there's no editor, because an editor serves as a gatekeeper. And I think that's where the weakness is with the citizen journalism, because there's no one to say, here is a red flag. If you proceed this way, there is a danger that you fall in a pit, and this might have serious consequences. Thank you very much.
Thank you
That
so
would be
much.
my submission.
I think there's a point you made about policies, and talking about that, there is another important tool in the entire toolbox to navigate this situation we are discussing right now, and it borders on having clear policies. Like every news organization is supposed to implement clear social media and communication policies to guide employee behavior. Most corporate entities do have this kind of policies. So, because most media organizations sometimes now retrieve their stories from the social media, unfortunately, because of a lot of challenges we know they don't have enough resources to have reporters everywhere. They can pick stories from Twitter or all these personalities, and I want to write a story. So, I believe it boils down also to training. So every organization should be able to have a clear policy on how to implement social media and communication policies to guide employee behavior. I think it's critical, because the truth is that the social media is the dominant thing all over right now. So I think it's a good point you made, Suwanga. Does anyone have any other uh, points to raise? Hello, any questions for our guest? I think we have Belle. That sounds like a female name. And Remy. So do you guys have any points to raise in terms of some of these issues we are talking about? Because again, when we're looking at a slap, I want to make this clear, because when we always talk about freedom of expression, we're not just talking about, it's not just for journalists, it's for everyone. Okay. So the strategic lawsuits against public participation, it means that if you are saying anything in a public forum, anything, you're expressing your opinion and all that, it could be a target as well. So it's also necessary to learn how to overcome some of these challenges. All right. So, and like Siwamba talked about, having legal representation is also important. But again, it's an extra cost. So, but there could be a way you can avoid even having such challenges in the first before you talk about having a legal representation. So, any comments or questions? Yeah, because another thing also that's even in the whole mix is that I don't know what you want to say about the Chibwala, because they're even targeting legal defenders. It's happening in this country right now. The lawyers who represent journalists and human rights defenders are themselves increasingly facing intimidation and criminal charges, creating a chilling effect that makes it harder for journalists to find legal representation. So,
I think, yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay. See that, and then you started talking about it. I think that these are unprecedented times, right? We would think that in democracies with fragile institutions, not happening here. But right now, even those who, when you're talking about legal representation, lawyers have to sign, lawyers who are the, for instance, big firms in the US who had sort of argued against Trump in the past. Some of them had to go into a liaison with him, sort of, just so that their agencies or their firms are not, sued. So there is this censorship, even against legal representation. We're seeing what's happening with BBC and Trump, right? Right now, the threats to sue how many billions. So I think that journalism is being tested right now. Freedom of speech is being tested, and it raises questions, ethical questions, right? For if you have to be very careful about what you say, then the issue of democracy and the freedom of, speech, what issues do that raise? Do we really have sort of a democracy? You know, if even for academia, if you have to be censored what you produce, that again is another issue. There are lines with this that cuts across all sort of all genres, not just journalism and that. If you're doing scholarship and you're careful about what you put out, it's another sort of censorship that in this sort of in this terrain, I think that that is beginning to show just how fragile the institutions are, and that sort of security that we thought were in major democracies, consolidated democracies like the US, for instance, are actually not there, could actually be fragile. So it's threatening that, and I think those sort of questions are not just there for, but the thing is, how do you maybe raise a question about how are you able to navigate this in times like this where even talking could be, arguing could sort of put you in boiling waters. But what we're seeing in places like the US is a lot of scholars are actually relocating just so that they're able to not be censored, able to critique. Austria is gaining a lot of US academia. And so what's in academics leave the US, right? Because there's that censorship. So it's not just for journalism, but it does raise questions that I think we have to maybe engage in conversations more, about that.
Absolutely. Yeah, obviously. That's why I said the whole concept of SLAP is not just for journalists because we're talking about, the challenge, even blog, everyone, it's about the inability of people to express themselves. If a potential researcher on healthcare is developing any research that may improve well-being, and for some reason, either for ideological reasons, some people oppose such research, that person could be a threat as well. So, and even the concept of even privacy, what determines privacy? All of us, have a quest for our privacy to be protected.
Right.
There are bloodlines in all these considerations. So it affects everyone, and that's why some of us believe that all these legal and judicial tactics, combined with economic pressures and physical threats, they contribute significantly to the decline of free, speech, freedom of expression, press freedom around the world. And that's why it's an important conversation to really have, across different regions. And from what happened in the mornings and the earlier session, we can see that both, North and Southern Hemisphere were challenged. And like the UNESCO representative talked about, yeah, it's more predominant in Latin America. But at the same time, it's happening in Asia, it's happening in Africa, it's happening in Europe, and here as well. So I think it's a very difficult situation. But again, we'll continue to navigate some of these things, developing some strategies to overcome that. There are a whole bunch of reactive tools as well that exist beyond all those tools that we talked about, how to manage defamation threats. Of course, Chibuala mentioned one of those, seeking legal counsel. All right. And another thing also, apology is also a great thing. Like BBC has apologized. I'm sure that apology will mitigate whatever punishment perhaps they may get in the law courts, or if such apology is okay with the plaintiff, you can say, okay, because you have apologized, I can let you go. So there are many ways. Those are reactive tools, right? So you can also publish a statement, issue a public statement to kind of correct false information and clarify the facts like they have done, all right? So, or if you have evidence to challenge, if you gather all documents related to the defamatory statements and you think you can go ahead and, push it, that's fine. You see, like CBS did. CBS honestly may have won their case if they wanted, but they did not do that because of business interest. But what happened was that they were negotiating for this merger, I think with Skydance or Paramount or whatever. So, and they realized that who is in control of FCC, the federal government. So, if it was a smart business sense to have, capitulated, but professionally, it damages the brand. But most people don't care anymore. So, there are a lot of things that you want to consider in making decisions on how to, react to some of these issues. So, do we have other comments or questions?
I think,
yeah,
I think, Dr. Chena, I think we also consider part of the preventive measures, the work of NGOs. I listened to the presentation of Ms. Fox, Lena Fox, with regard to the fund that UNESCO set aside to help fight this kind of threat. So I think that fund should also be extended to encourage NGOs specifically established to fight SLAP, to also create awareness among people that although this is the intent of the billionaires and the powerful people in the society, just to cripple freedom of speech, that people should not bother, because I think there's a lot of protection, legal protection, which are often being ignored, because even this issue of defamation, which may include libel and slander, depending on whether it is published or not published, proving defamation actually is not an easy thing, but it may be an easy thing for somebody who's who can have the best lawyers, and difficult to defend oneself if they don't have enough fund to fight the legal battle. But I think if you look at the requirements, the claimant has to do a lot to prove. But like we said, it is a strategic lawsuit just to make sure that a voice is silenced. So that is, I think, the importance of having civil society organizations to focus on this area in order to protect the democracy, to make sure that freedom of speech occupies its rightful place in the society. I think what we are seeing now in the United States is unprecedented. I never know this. We thought the United States is the freedom of, I think, is the champion of human rights all over the world, because recently President Trump threatened Nigeria that the United States will attack Nigeria on what's described as Christian genocide. I think that's a championing of human rights. So we thought that the United States is a champion of human rights, in that we are coming to terms with the reality.
Go ahead. Okay, maybe we lost him. But I think he was making a very good point, really. And he reminded us of the point raised by Lena Fox from UNESCO, the Legal Defense Fund for journalists who may be affected by this SLAP thing. I think it's a very important thing that we should create awareness for journalists around the world to know, especially in Africa, to know about the availability of this legal defense fund for some of them who do not know how to access that. And that's where the civil society organizations really will play a huge role, you know. And also talking about what Dr. Sirajo talked about, his surprise that United States that ought to be, I mean, the perception that United States is the bastion of democracy and freedom. Yes, a lot of people have expressed such sentiments, you know, and quite frankly, I remember the publisher of New York Times, Schwarzberg author, sometime in 2016, especially when he was responding to the president who said then that the media was the enemy of the people. So there's something he said that I think it was instructive, you know, or should be instructive to all of us, even, you know, that the greatest export of the United States to the world is freedom, you know. And when we look at some of these things happening, some of them probably will challenge that narrative, you know. But I still think that all hope is not lost, you know. But these are threats of the moment, and like every dynamic society, you know, will overcome some of these challenges with time and resilience, you know. So I don't know if we have any other comments because we are supposed to wrap up in the next 4 minutes, you know. So do you have any other intervention from anyone?
Dr. Uchena, maybe if I may add as a last contribution,
Sure.
As I think there is need for synergies among journalists and media practitioners in general, because that also serves as a safeguard, because in numbers, you have an opportunity to defend yourselves and like to speak as a lone voice. So for instance, if one media house has been targeted with the countless legal suits or is being attacked in whatever way, through synergies or having connection, joining organizations for the media within the country, within the sub-region, and indeed at the global level, it helps because other people can voice out on your behalf. So I think I just wanted to raise that point, that it is imperative for media practitioners to have that network of other practitioners to defend themselves. And of course, working with other professions, legal practitioners, working with the civil society, working with all other entities that are interested in promotion of freedom of speech and expression, and indeed media freedom. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chibwala. As a matter of fact, yes, a lot of times, most organizations operate in silos, and I've emphasized this in several platforms where I talk about collaborative journalism, you know, because even in terms of all these resource challenges, when you collaborate, it reduces the burden and the prospect of, you know, sustainability. So, like this type of synergy he talked about is also important, really, because if, for example, somebody wants to threaten you as a startup news organization, they know that they have some, you know, collaboration with other organizations, that person may think twice, you know, because, like I said, most of these slap thing are merely harassment, intimidation. They are just empty because sometimes they just do that for you to chicken out, you know. And this was an experience I gathered from the editor-in-chief of Wheeling Free Press in West Virginia, who also told his own story. You know, like they want to do some investigation about corruption about local, you know, district members, or they're threatening them with lawsuits, and they will hands up because they don't have money to go and, you know, look for an attorney. So, but if they know that you have a backing of other organizations or you're affiliated with other organizations, I think such things may not really happen. So I really welcome that suggestion about building synergies. It's very important in today's world. And again, no one person can really handle some of these challenges. It's good to have partnerships. That's the point. All right. So, Chibola, I really thank you so much for spending time with us. It should be almost 8:30 in your country right now, right? I believe.
Yes, Dr. Uchenna, it's exactly 8:30 p.m. here in Lusaka, Zambia. Thank
That's it. Thank you so much for your time, and my regards to everyone. And of course, Dr. Sirajo, I don't know where you're back. You should also be getting ready to sleep yourself. So we're still in the afternoon period over here. I really thank everyone who joined. I also thank Professor Kereke, then Attorney Gershowitz. Thank you also for your time. Then Dr. Remy, I thank you as well. And if I didn't mention a name, please, it's not anything. There are a lot of people I can't see their full names here. So Michael, Dr. Michael Wosu, I've seen you, and Michael Sullivan as well. So Stephen Rodriguez, and so on. So there are some people that have different ways to identify themselves. And of course, Dr. Unobe is here as well. So I really want to thank everyone for participating. And hopefully we're able to have an in-person event next year. Is this shutdown that really have made us to transition to this online thing, and it has worked because people who were supposed to come from other places can no longer, that's the advantage of technology. So the event was supposed to take place at the graduate school at the City University of New York. So, but with this, we're able to pull people from different continents. So, we really thank all of you for making it possible. We'll produce the reports and share with everyone, in a matter of days or weeks. Thank you so much for your participation, and enjoy the rest of your day or night or whatever. I'm sure Im Jong-un must have gone back to sleep a long time ago. They should be getting ready to wake up in Malaysia. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
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 Thank you, Dr. Ekwo. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, Professor Kereke.
Right. Okay, all right. Next time. I'll call you though later today.
Okay, thank you.
Bye, Professor. Thank you so much.
Hey, Remy, thank you so much.
You are welcome.
Thanks a lot.
Good program. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.